context of this Congress, and also in the broader perspective of how we have become more and more interested in early life and the 1,000 Days Initiative, etc., we have started focusing more and more on body composition during very early life. Here you see two photos of infants that were born in 2010. They were born just a couple of weeks apart. One little girl was born in Sweden with a birth weight that is very typical in Sweden, 3.8 kilos. And one little boy was born in Bangladesh, and his birth weight was 50% of the little girl in Sweden. So this is the scenario that we see very, very often. Just by looking at them, we see they look very different, the size is different, the weight is different. But if we would do a body composition assessment of these children, we might find similar information as what Professor Jackson referred to that has been described in India, that although the little boy in Bangladesh looks very thin and scrawny, he might have a higher proportion of body fat that would predispose him to a higher risk of developing non-communicable diseases later in life. So this is just to exemplify the need to introduce a measure of quality. We have heard about the WHO growth standards. This is a very good development by seeing now that more and more countries are adopting to use the new, not so new anymore maybe, but the growth charts that were launched in 2006 that are based on global data, as we were discussing yesterday. What we would like to see would also be to introduce a quality measure, which would be a body composition assessment of children longitudinally. In order to do so, we've started an initiative about standardization of body composition during very early life, and we're working very closely with Professor Ellis in the development of a document that will hopefully be published by the IAEA early next year, where we have selected the most promising techniques for standardization. So that would be stable isotope technique for total body water, the use of the P-pod for those who are fortunate enough to have a P-pod, as well as DEXA to be able to make repeated measures and to monitor changes in body composition during the first 2 years of life, so within the 1,000-day window of opportunity. Of course, as you all know, after the presentation yesterday, the WHO child growth standards are based on breastfed infants, infants who are provided with optimal opportunities to grow and develop as children should grow and develop all over the world. And I've put in here a document that I'm sure all of you are familiar with, which is the Global Strategy for Infant and Young Child Feeding, stressing the importance of exclusive breastfeeding for the first 6 months of life. However, to collect data on breastfeeding practices, and in particular the volume of breast milk that is consumed by breastfed infants, as many of you are very well aware, I'm sure, is extremely difficult to do. And by introducing test weighing, for example, you run a risk of interfering in the mother-child bond, and you might interfere with feeding practices. So I've included another document here that we developed recently, which is another stable isotope technique, which is to assess the volume of breast milk, of human milk, that is consumed by breastfed infants. Again, it's based on isotope dilution, where the mother takes a dose of the deuterium oxide, and deuterium oxide is transferred to the baby through human milk. So if you're interested in this technique, I would encourage you to look at this document. The photo is again from Bangui, Central African Republic, where this methodology is now being used. In addition to the documents, we have e-learning or distance learning modules on total body water, as well as some other stable isotope techniques, and we have a few in the pipeline. The ones highlighted in green are available on our website. Of course, we do not work in isolation. We depend, as I said, to a very large extent on close collaboration with experts in the field of nutrition, in the applications of stable isotope techniques, and we work with a number of the experts who are in this audience. But I also want to highlight that the IAEA has inaugurated its first collaborating center. It is not in this region, it is in India, but it's a very good start to have at least one collaborating center in nutrition. Those of you who are familiar with the WHO collaborating center scheme know that there are hundreds and hundreds of collaborating centers. The IAEA only has a total of 20 in all sectors, so we are quite pleased that we have at least one in nutrition, and it happens to be in Bangalore, India, where there is a very long tradition of using stable isotope techniques in nutrition in different applications. Within this region, we have a number of countries who have been involved in various projects. Here I was just putting a few countries together, receiving support from the IAEA through the Technical Cooperation Program, national projects. We have supported, I mentioned Kuwait before, we have supported Morocco, Sudan, Egypt, Syria, Iraq, and also some of the countries in the region have participated in regional projects. The MENA region includes 2 regions in the IAEA jargon, because it's both Asia and Africa. But again, countries such as Morocco, who has been a very active country, Sudan, again, very active, Lebanon, Iran, and I hope I haven't forgotten anybody. We have one large project in Africa that some countries present here, Morocco and Sudan, participate in. This is about collecting longitudinal data on breast milk intake in infants in African countries. And here we are working with about 15 member states in Africa who have all adopted a standardized protocol to collect longitudinal data. And once we have this data set, even if we don't get a complete data set based on 15 countries, maybe just on maybe a third of these countries where the work will really be fully completed, this will be a unique data set that is not available today, where we will know much more about the volume of human milk, as well as the introduction of complementary foods in African children all over the continent. Coordinated research projects, I mentioned them briefly. It's another mechanism by which we provide support to our member states. If you're interested, I would encourage you to look at our website. We provide very modest funding, but we do provide opportunities for networking and for interactions with people who are or who have a long-term tradition and a lot of experience and expertise in the use of nuclear techniques in nutrition with those who are newcomers to the field. And this has been found to be very, very useful. We have a whole range of coordinated research projects, including one on severe acute malnutrition, where body composition assessment is used. We are also looking at body composition in older children and associating that with risk factors for chronic disease, as well as a doctoral CRP that will include a PhD student in each site, where work will be focused on infant nutrition, breast milk intake, and or body composition. So this is my last slide. We see nuclear techniques as very, very useful tools to move the nutrition agenda forward, and very much so related to the 1,000 days window of opportunity, and to use that information to provide evidence-based information that feeds into policies to improve and change the nutrition situation, the nutrition status of infants and young children in our member states. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Doctor, and you've been on time.
Yeah.
May I open the floor for discussion, please?